A murder mystery tonight out of Roxboro, where a woman is accused of killing her husband. His body found lying on a plastic tarp outside.
The morning of March 19, 2025, began like any other on Bells Mill Road in Philadelphia's quiet Roxboro neighborhood. Residents were just starting their day when screams shattered the peace, prompting a concerned neighbor to call 911. What police discovered between two parked cars would leave the entire community in shock. Welcome to Shadows of Crime. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button to join our community as we explore the darkest corners of human behavior and seek understanding from tragedy. Jordan Baxter, a 38-year-old veteran SEPTA engineer and father of three, lay motionless on a plastic sheet. Blood had pooled beneath his body, and a gun rested on his chest. The fatal gunshot wound to the back of his head told a story of betrayal that no one in this tight-knit community could have anticipated. Just 5 days earlier, a cryptic message appeared on Facebook. "These females out here be plotting on your marriage and waiting for your downfall so they can come right on in, and these men let them." The author? Danielle Baxter, Jordan's 39-year-old wife and the mother of his children. The Baxters were known throughout the neighborhood as the family who always waved hello, whose children played respectfully in their yards. "Super nice family," one neighbor would later tell reporters, the disbelief evident in their voice. No one had heard arguments, no one had noticed anything amiss, yet inside their home, investigators found blood-soaked bedding, evidence that what happened outside was merely the final act in a domestic tragedy that had been building silently behind closed doors. What transforms a marriage into a murder scene? How does paranoia about infidelity evolve into violence so extreme that a sleeping husband becomes a target? And perhaps most disturbing, how could a mother of three meticulously stage a crime scene, placing her husband's body between cars with a weapon deliberately positioned on his chest? As we piece together the events that led to that fateful March morning, we'll uncover the psychological breakdown that preceded physical violence, the warning signs hidden in plain sight on social media, and the devastating aftermath for three children caught in the crossfire of adult betrayal. But first, we need to understand who Jordan and Danielle Baxter really were, beyond the pleasant smiles they showed their neighbors, beyond the seemingly perfect family portrait they presented to the world. Before tragedy struck the 800 block of Bells Mill Road, the Baxter family represented suburban stability in Philadelphia's Roxboro neighborhood. Their two-story home, nestled among similar houses on a quiet street, gave no indication of the darkness that would eventually consume it. Jordan Baxter, at 38, had built a solid reputation during his 14-year career with the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority. As a regional rail engineer, he was known for his reliability and professionalism. Colleagues would later describe him as one of the coolest, realest engineers they had ever met. Bill Rowland Jr., a co-worker, posted after Jordan's death that he truly could light up a room and was a hell of a human being, another colleague shared. The sentiment echoed across social media tributes from those who had worked alongside him for years. At home, Jordan was a father to three children, ages 8, 9, and 15. Neighbors frequently spotted the family together riding bikes, walking to nearby parks, or simply chatting with others on the street. The children were described as well-mannered, a reflection of what appeared to be attentive parenting. Danielle Baxter, 39, maintained a more reserved public presence than her husband. While Jordan built connections through his work, Danielle focused on family life. Her Facebook page featured typical posts about her children and occasional reflections on marriage, nothing that would raise eyebrows until those final days before the murder. "They were friendly and pleasant," recalled one neighbor who requested anonymity when speaking to reporters.
Nothing. No, and I'm right here. I heard absolutely nothing.
Super nice family. I knew them enough to say hello, goodbye, see the kids, wave to the kids.
This sentiment was repeated by multiple residents who expressed complete shock at what transpired. The Baxters attended neighborhood gatherings, participated in local events, and generally presented themselves as a cohesive family unit. No police had ever been called to their address for domestic disturbances. No public arguments had drawn attention. The facade was impeccable. Yet beneath this carefully constructed image, fractures had formed. According to some reports, Jordan had recently moved out of the family home. The separation wasn't widely known among neighbors, who continued to see both parents with their children, maintaining the appearance of family unity despite the growing distance between them. The Murphy Recreation Center on Shunk Street held special significance for Jordan. His cousin, Anthony Lee, would later explain during a memorial gathering that this was where Jordan had spent countless hours as a child. This was the meeting spot, Lee told mourners. Everyone would go to his house and everyone would get the balls, bikes, and come here and play. This is where he created a lot of memories and built a lot of relationships. Lee emphasized that Jordan was most happy in this place, with not a care in the world, just playing on the playground with his friends and having fun. This image of Jordan, the dedicated father, reliable worker, and man connected to his community, made what happened all the more incomprehensible to those who knew him. The morning Jordan's body was discovered, one neighbor summed up the community's disbelief. 10 cop cars, rescue, fire trucks, she recounted. It's a quiet street. That doesn't happen. But it did happen. And as police began their investigation, the gap between the Baxters' public image and private reality would widen into an abyss, revealing that the super nice family harbored tensions that had escalated beyond anyone's imagination. What no one in the neighborhood could see was how Danielle's thoughts had begun to darken in the days before the murder, a transformation documented in real time through her social media activity that would later provide crucial insight into her state of mind. 5 days before Jordan Baxter's body was discovered between 2 parked cars, Danielle Baxter's Facebook page revealed the first public glimpse into her deteriorating mental state. On March 14, 2025, she posted a message that would later haunt investigators and loved ones alike. These females out here be plotting on your marriage and waiting for your downfall so they can come right on in, and these men let them. The post sat there, accumulating likes and sympathetic comments from friends, who likely assumed this was just typical relationship venting. No one recognized it as a dangerous harbinger of what was to come. But this wasn't Danielle's first concerning message. Earlier she had written, "I will be his peace if he's mine," a statement that in retrospect contained an implicit threat. These digital breadcrumbs revealed a woman increasingly consumed by jealousy and paranoia. While Jordan worked long shifts as a SEPTA engineer, Danielle's mind constructed elaborate scenarios of betrayal. She became convinced that other women were actively working to destroy her marriage, and worse, that Jordan was complicit in their efforts. The couple's separation had not been publicly announced. Friends later expressed shock upon learning that Jordan had moved out of the family home shortly before his death. This crucial detail, that Jordan was no longer living under the same roof, adds significant context to Danielle's social media activity. What appeared to be general complaints about relationship loyalty were actually direct references to her specific situation. "Looking back now, we should have seen it," said one family friend who requested anonymity. The posts were getting more frequent, more accusatory, but nobody connects social media rants to potential violence. We all just scroll past. During this period, the Baxter children, particularly the older teenager, likely witnessed the deterioration of their parents' relationship firsthand. While maintaining appearances in public, the family dynamic had fundamentally changed. Jordan's absence from the home created a void that Danielle filled with suspicion and resentment. What makes this case particularly disturbing is the lack of official warning signs. There were no police reports of domestic disturbances at the Baxter residence. Neighbors never heard shouting or witnessed confrontations. The children continued attending school regularly. From the outside, any marital discord remained invisible, contained entirely within Danielle's increasingly paranoid thoughts and cryptic online posts. Jordan's colleagues at SEPTA noticed nothing unusual in his behavior during his final days. He continued showing up for shifts, performing his duties as a regional rail engineer with the same reliability he demonstrated throughout his 14-year career. If he was concerned about Danielle's mental state or felt threatened in any way, he never confided in coworkers. The separation itself might have been Jordan's attempt to defuse a volatile situation. Moving out could have been a protective measure, creating physical distance while figuring out next steps. Without a history of reported domestic violence, it's impossible to know if this was Jordan's first attempt to extract himself from a dangerous relationship or the culmination of long-standing issues. What we do know is that Danielle's jealousy had reached a breaking point. Her conviction that other women were plotting on her marriage had become an obsession. The perceived threat of these unnamed females waiting for her downfall consumed her thoughts to such a degree that she began viewing her husband not as a partner, but as a traitor. This transformation from loving wife to murderer didn't happen overnight. Mental health experts who reviewed the case suggest that Danielle likely experienced a progressive deterioration in her thinking, with jealousy evolving into pathological suspicion. The separation likely accelerated this decline, confirming her worst fears rather than providing space for reflection. When someone becomes fixated on infidelity to this degree, they often interpret everything through that lens, explained Dr. Melissa Thornton, a forensic psychologist not directly involved in the case but who has studied similar crimes. A husband working late becomes evidence of cheating. A text message becomes proof of betrayal. The mind constructs an alternate reality where these suspicions are facts. As March 19th approached, the disconnect between Danielle's internal world and external reality widened. While neighbors still saw a super nice family and Jordan's colleagues interacted with a dedicated professional, Danielle was silently planning an act that would destroy everything, including the lives of her 3 children. What happened in the final hours before Jordan's death? How did a domestic separation escalate to murder? The answers lie in the physical evidence discovered on that plastic sheet between 2 parked cars. Near March 19, 2025 began with screams that pierced the pre-dawn quiet of Bells Mill Road. At 6:53 a.m., a neighbor dialed 911, reporting the disturbing sounds coming from the direction of the Baxter residence. Within minutes, Philadelphia police officers arrived at the 800 block, expecting perhaps a domestic dispute or medical emergency. What they found instead would become one of the most disturbing crime scenes in Roxboro's recent history. Between 2 parked cars in front of the Baxter home lay the body of Jordan Baxter. The 38-year-old father of 3 was positioned on a plastic sheet, his body already growing cold in the March morning air. Most striking to the responding officers was the deliberate arrangement of the scene. Jordan's body had been carefully placed, and a gun rested conspicuously on his chest. As medical personnel confirmed what was already apparent, Jordan Baxter was dead. Detectives began processing the scene. The cause of death was immediately suspicious: a single gunshot wound to the back of the head. This wasn't a suicide, despite the weapon placed on the victim's chest. This was a staged crime scene. If you're finding this story valuable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Shadows of Crime. Your support helps us continue bringing these important stories to light, and we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The investigation quickly moved inside the Baxter home, where officers discovered crucial evidence that contradicted the outdoor scene. Blood-soaked bedding told a different story than the carefully arranged body outside. Jordan hadn't been killed between those cars. He had been murdered in his bed, likely while sleeping, and then transported outside. "I heard absolutely nothing," said a next-door neighbor, her voice reflecting the disbelief shared by many on the street. "And I'm right here. I heard absolutely nothing." The absence of reported gunshots raised immediate questions. Had neighbors simply slept through the sound? Was a silencer used? Or had the murder occurred hours earlier, with the body moved just before dawn? The timeline became a critical focus for investigators. As crime scene technicians collected evidence from both the outdoor scene and the bedroom, detectives began interviewing neighbors. The consistent response was shock. No one had noticed anything unusual about the Baxter family in recent days. No one had heard arguments or disturbances. The screams that prompted the 911 call appeared to be the first indication of trouble. By mid-morning, the medical examiner had arrived to transport Jordan's body for autopsy. Preliminary findings confirmed what the scene suggested. Jordan had been shot once in the back of the head at close range, an execution-style killing that likely occurred while he was lying down. The position of the wound indicated he probably never saw his attacker. The gun found on Jordan's chest was registered to Danielle Baxter. Ballistics would later confirm it as the murder weapon. This detail, combined with the blood evidence inside the home, quickly narrowed the focus of the investigation. Where was Danielle during these critical hours? Initially, she was nowhere to be found at the crime scene. When detectives located her later that morning, her demeanor raised immediate red flags. Rather than displaying the shock and grief expected of a woman whose husband had just been murdered, Danielle appeared detached. Her responses calculated. During initial questioning, Danielle claimed ignorance about what had happened to Jordan. She suggested perhaps an intruder had entered their home or that Jordan had enemies through work, but her story quickly unraveled when confronted with the physical evidence. The plastic sheet Jordan's body rested on matched material found in the Baxter garage. The blood pattern on the bedroom mattress indicated Jordan had been shot while sleeping. Most damning was the gun, registered in Danielle's name and bearing only her fingerprint. By the afternoon of March 19th, investigators had assembled a preliminary timeline. Jordan, who had been staying elsewhere during the separation, had returned to the family home, possibly to visit his children or collect belongings. At some point he lay down on the bed, perhaps to rest, perhaps invited there by Danielle under the pretense of reconciliation. While Jordan slept, Danielle retrieved her gun and fired a single shot into the back of his head. Then, in the pre-dawn hours of March 19th, she wrapped his body in a plastic sheet and dragged it outside, positioning it between two cars. The gun was placed on his chest in what appeared to be an attempt to suggest suicide. Though the wound location made this scenario impossible, what Danielle couldn't have anticipated was that a neighbor would be awake early enough to hear her struggling with the body, generating the screams that led to the 911 call. This single miscalculation in her plan brought immediate police attention before she could establish an alibi or further clean up evidence. By nightfall on March 19th, detectives had gathered enough evidence to build a case against Danielle Baxter. On March 20th, just 24 hours after Jordan Baxter's body was discovered, Philadelphia police formally charged Danielle Baxter with murder. The charges didn't stop there. Possession of an instrument of crime, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence rounded out the list of offenses that would keep the 39-year-old mother behind bars at the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center. Denied bail as she awaited trial. The speed with which investigators built their case against Danielle spoke to the overwhelming evidence. "This wasn't a whodunit," explained a law enforcement source familiar with the investigation. "The evidence pointed in one direction from the start. Our job was to document it meticulously. That documentation revealed a crime that was both impulsive and calculated. The impulsive aspect, shooting a sleeping man in what appeared to be a fit of jealous rage. The calculated part, the elaborate staging afterward, dragging the body outside, placing it on plastic sheeting between cars, positioning the gun on Jordan's chest in a clumsy attempt to suggest suicide. Forensic analysis of the bedroom revealed that Jordan had indeed been shot while lying down, likely asleep. The bullet trajectory, blood spatter patterns, and position of the body all confirmed this scenario. The single gunshot wound to the back of the head indicated he never saw it coming, never had a chance to defend himself. I'd love to hear where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below, and let us know if you've ever encountered warning signs in relationships that others missed. Your experiences might help someone else recognize danger before it's too late. The murder weapon, a handgun registered to Danielle, contained only her fingerprints. What puzzled investigators initially was the timing. If Danielle had killed Jordan in a fit of rage, why wait hours to move the body? Psychological profilers suggested she may have experienced shock after the murder, followed by panic as she realized the consequences of her actions. The staging appeared to be an afterthought, a desperate attempt to create confusion about the circumstances of Jordan's death. The screams that prompted the neighbor's 911 call likely came from Danielle herself, struggling with the physical task of moving Jordan's body. At 38, Jordan had been physically fit. His work as a SEPTA engineer kept him active. Moving his body would have required significant effort, especially for someone acting alone in a state of emotional distress. As investigators dug deeper into the Baxters' relationship, they discovered that Jordan had indeed moved out of the family home approximately 2 weeks before his murder. Friends confirmed the separation was Jordan's decision, though he remained committed to co-parenting their 3 children. He had been staying with a relative, but frequently returned to the house to see his kids. On the night of March 18th, Jordan had come to the house, possibly invited by Danielle under the pretense of discussing their relationship or the children. At some point, he lay down on the bed, perhaps exhausted from his shift at SEPTA or believing a reconciliation was possible. This vulnerability gave Danielle the opportunity she needed. The Philadelphia District Attorney's Office built their case methodically, focusing on 3 key elements: means, opportunity, and motive. Danielle had the means, her registered firearm, clear opportunity, access to Jordan while he slept, and a motive documented in her own words through her social media posts about women plotting on her marriage. "Those Facebook posts are essentially a confession of her state of mind," noted a prosecutor assigned to the case. "They show escalating paranoia, jealousy, and a fixation on perceived threats to her marriage. Combined with the physical evidence, they tell a complete story." On March 21st, Danielle made her first court appearance, a preliminary arraignment where the charges were formally read. She appeared via video link from the correctional facility, her expression blank as the judge denied bail due to the severity of the charges and flight risk. The Philadelphia community reacted with shock as news of the arrest spread. SEPTA released a statement expressing condolences. SEPTA is saddened by the tragic loss of Jordan Baxter, who is a veteran regional rail engineer. Our thoughts are with his loved ones at this difficult time. As the legal process began its slow march toward trial, attention turned to the 3 Baxter children, now effectively orphaned, with one parent dead and the other facing life imprisonment. The oldest at 15, the youngest just 8, they had become the hidden victims of their mother's actions, their lives forever altered by a single moment of violence born from jealousy and paranoia. But what exactly had triggered Danielle's fatal action after years of marriage? The answer appeared to lie in her increasing conviction that Jordan's separation was not just the end of their relationship, but a betrayal involving another woman. The question that haunted everyone who knew the Baxters was simple yet profound. Why? What transforms a mother of 3 into someone capable of executing her husband while he sleeps? Jordan's decision to separate from Danielle approximately 2 weeks before his death appears to have been the catalyst that accelerated her psychological decline. While the couple hadn't filed for divorce, the physical separation represented a concrete step toward ending their marriage, a reality Danielle couldn't accept. Rather than acknowledging potential problems within the relationship that might have led to Jordan's departure, Danielle constructed an alternative narrative. Jordan hadn't left because of issues between them. He had been lured away by another woman, or women, who had been plotting on their marriage. This narrative provided Danielle with something external to blame, protecting her from confronting her own potential role in the marriage's breakdown. It also gave her an enemy to focus on, channeling her pain into anger directed at these unnamed females she referenced in her March 14th Facebook post. When someone creates this kind of external blame scenario, they're setting up a dangerous psychological framework. explained a behavioral analyst consulted by investigators. If you believe someone has stolen something precious from you, taking extreme action can feel justified in your mind. The 5 days between Danielle's cryptic Facebook post and Jordan's murder represent a critical escalation period. During this time, her suspicions likely hardened into certainty, and thoughts of revenge may have begun taking shape. The fact that Jordan continued visiting the family home to see his children provided both opportunity and constant reminders of what she perceived as his betrayal. Phone records obtained by investigators revealed another potential trigger. On March 18th, the evening before the murder, Jordan received several text messages from a female coworker at SEPTA regarding shift schedules. While completely professional in content, these messages, if seen by Danielle, could have fueled her paranoia and jealousy, potentially pushing her over the edge. What makes this case particularly tragic is that no evidence has emerged suggesting Jordan was actually involved with another woman. Friends and coworkers described him as devoted to his children and committed to maintaining a civil relationship with Danielle despite their separation. The other women existed primarily in Danielle's increasingly distorted perception of reality. 10 days after Jordan Baxter's murder, a crowd gathered outside Murphy Recreation Center on Shunk Street. They came carrying red and white balloons, Jordan's favorite colors. Some wore custom T-shirts bearing his image, others brought motorcycles, a nod to one of his passions. This wasn't just a memorial. It was a testament to the void his death had created in countless lives. "It was at my house on Monday, Tuesday. We got the call on Wednesday," said one friend, the disbelief still evident in his voice. The sudden transition from everyday life to tragedy left many struggling to process their grief. Anthony Lee, Jordan's cousin, chose this location deliberately. "This was the meeting spot," he explained to the assembled mourners. "Everyone would go to his house, and everyone would get the balls bikes and come here and play. This is where he created a lot of memories and built a lot of relationships." As the balloons rose into the Philadelphia sky, they carried with them the collective sorrow of a community grappling with senseless loss. The release provided a moment of catharsis, but for Jordan's 3 children, the journey through grief was just beginning. In the aftermath of the murder, the Baxter children, aged 8, 9, and 15, faced an unimaginable reality. Their father was gone forever, and their mother sat in a jail cell charged with his murder. Overnight, they had effectively lost both parents. Custody arrangements fell to extended family members who stepped in to provide stability amid chaos. The children were separated from their home, their school routines disrupted, and their sense of security shattered. Mental health professionals were brought in to help them process trauma that most adults would struggle to comprehend. "I'm heartbroken," said one family member at the balloon release. "He has 3 sons, and he always was there no matter what." This consistent presence in his children's lives made Jordan's absence all the more devastating. Financial concerns quickly mounted alongside emotional ones. Jordan's income as a SEPTA engineer had been a primary support for the family. With both parents now gone from the household, the children faced not just emotional upheaval, but potential financial instability. In response, friends established a GoFundMe campaign with a dual purpose: to cover Jordan's funeral expenses and to create a trust for the children's future needs. The campaign description was direct in its appeal: to give him a proper funeral and to support the children left behind. The response from the Philadelphia community was immediate and generous. Donations poured in from SEPTA colleagues, neighbors, friends, and even strangers moved by the tragedy. While no amount of money could restore what the children had lost, it provided practical support during an impossible time. Jordan's colleagues at SEPTA felt his loss acutely. Many attended the memorial, some bringing their motorcycles for a special tribute. One coworker performed a song in Jordan's honor, the music cutting through grief to celebrate the man they had known. Jordan's story reminds us that domestic issues often remain hidden beneath carefully maintained public personas. The The smiling photos on social media, the cheerful family gatherings, the professional success, these can all mask profound suffering that goes unnoticed until it's too late. The most important lesson we can take from this tragedy is that seeking help is not a sign of weakness, but of courage. No one should wait until they reach a breaking point. If you recognize yourself or someone you love in this story, please know that resources exist. National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233, available 24/7. Crisis Text Line. Text HOME to 771,771. Local community support groups and counseling services, legal aid organizations specializing in domestic issues. These resources offer confidential support, practical guidance, and sometimes just a compassionate ear when you need it most. As we honor Jordan's memory, let's commit to creating communities where people feel safe to speak their truth. This means checking in meaningfully with loved ones, learning to recognize warning signs, and responding with empathy rather than judgment when someone shares their struggle. If this documentary has resonated with you, consider sharing it with others who might benefit from its message. Sometimes a single conversation can be the lifeline someone needs to make a change. Jordan's life was cut tragically short, but through sharing their story, we hope to prevent similar tragedies. No one should have to suffer in silence. No one should feel trapped without options. And no one should believe that their situation is beyond hope. Remember, the first step toward healing is breaking the silence. Whether you're struggling yourself or concerned about someone else, reaching out could make all the difference.